This video promised to be one of the easiest that I'd ever written, and yet it ended up being one of the most difficult. I thought it would be easy because I summed up, with the help of our buddy John Rettinger from Techno Buffalo, my thoughts on the thing over 2 months ago and figured I could pretty much point vaguely to my left and say basically that. But it was difficult because now that I've actually been hands-on and using it as a daily driver, I'm finding the 12-inch Retina MacBook early 2015 edition, whatever it's called, man, I hate their naming scheme, a little bit more difficult to hate. A little. On the top of the unit, under our protective D-brand vinyl wrap, is a plain blasted anodized aluminum finish with an Apple logo square in the middle. On the bottom is more plain aluminum, and I guess this would be a good time to point out that it can be silver gold or space gray, with some assembly screws and 4 black feet that are surprisingly non-grippy, making it easy to slide around on the desk. Then on the sides, we find one of the main sources of the controversy that exists around this product. A 3.5mm combo audio jack on the right and a single tiny USB Type-C connector on the left. That's it. So out of the box, you are expected to use the built-in wireless AC 867 megabit, Bluetooth, or that USB port. So it better be one special USB port then, right? Well, actually it kind of is. So for starters, and this is important, it is not a USB 3.1 10 gigabit port. Rather, it runs at the older USB 3.0 5 gigabit speed, but because it uses the Type-C connector, it gets some extra fancy functionality. Number one is power. It can both deliver more power than a standard USB 3.0 Type A port, and it can receive power to charge your notebook, which is good because it's sure not getting power from anywhere else. Number two is alternate modes, which use auxiliary pins in the Type-C connector to enable extra functionality like HDMI or DisplayPort video output, with more fancy adapters soon to come. But Linus, you might say, I wouldn't have needed any of that adapter stuff if I just had a MagSafe power connector and a couple of normal ports on it. Lenovo and ASUS managed devices this thin without removing all the ports. Why couldn't Apple do that? Great question. Moving on. The MacBook has a silky smooth, albeit a little bit flimsy feeling, one-finger hinge that opens to reveal some of the actually more interesting things that Apple has done under the hood. I'll start with the webcam. It's a piece of crap, and I'd say Apple's design team should be embarrassed, but this is the same company that put a microphone on the back of an all-in-one PC, so I guess anything goes around there. So let's move on to the display. Why is it that Apple is the only one willing to buck the industry's 16:9 aspect ratio trend and put a 16:10 display on smaller devices where that extra vertical space is a freaking godsend? Thank you, Apple, for the bright, beautiful 2304 by 1440 stunner of an IPS monitor that you've crammed into this device. Since I use a Razer Blade 14 as my daily driver, I instantly started swiping around on it, only to realize that Apple still thinks a fraction of a millimeter is more important than a touchscreen, so the rules are similar to the local strip club. But hey, it's better than a pickle and ice cream sandwich, and I'll take it. Under the screen are the surprisingly not horrible speakers. Most devices this thin are basically unlisten-toable and will actually cause vibrating distortion when turned up to the max. But while I didn't experience any thunderous bass while watching the Avengers Age of Ultron trailer, the experience was actually not too shabby. Which leads us finally to the meat and potatoes of any notebook video. What's it like to actually use the thing? Well, the story starts before the device was even shipped, when D-Brand thoughtfully offered to preload Windows for me. I told them, no, don't worry about it, it's okay. To which they replied, are you sure? You'll need the Type-C breakout adapter from Apple, which is out of stock, and a USB hub, just to plug in the 2 flash drives required for the boot camp setup process. Ugh. And that's really the experience in a nutshell. Want to do casual things like watching HD YouTube videos around the house? Willing to use another separate computer every time you want to plug in a mouse or transfer files off your camera? Great experience. Want to do any kind of power user stuff on the go? Although that stuff I just mentioned hardly feels power user to me. Buy something else, because you'll either be carting around adapters that negate the ease of use benefits of a thin light, or you'll be constantly frustrated. But while it's easy to hate on, and the lack of ports all but eliminates this MacBook as an option for someone like me, there were some things I really liked about the device. The haptic feedback touchpad and keyboard, both very controversial design choices, stood out to me actually as a step in the right direction. I'll start with the touchpad. Instead of a hinge at the top and a mechanical downward movement to make it click to save space that Apple assures us was used to cram in more batteries for that 9 hours of web browsing per charge, the entire surface of the spacious glass-topped capacitive touchpad is pressure sensitive and vibrates when you press a little bit to simulate a click, then again with an adjustable pressure threshold in software when you press harder. It's awesome. This isn't your dad's haptic feedback that makes the whole device shake and sounds like it's gonna fall apart. It's incredibly subtle, and I'm willing to bet that if you didn't tell your mom that the touchpad doesn't actually press down, she would swear that it was moving down. And on top of that, it's really useful. Since there's no driver support in Windows for the feature, not to mention the annoying delays on double touch to drag, I had to fire up OS X, which thankfully I somewhat know how to use thanks to this video series, where it does loads of cool stuff, like allowing quick renaming of files and folders, file previews, getting shipment details when you force touch, a tracking number, previewing links in your browser, and much more. Paradigm shifting. I wish it was more customizable, but who knows, maybe that's to come. Then again, it is Apple. The keyboard, though, is one that many more people are raising hell about, and I get it. Apple's butterfly switch, another space-saving feature, does not have the same satisfying tactile feedback of a mechanical switch or even a half-decent scissor switch. But I have to give them credit here. I may not enjoy the typing experience, and I don't, but if I evaluate it objectively, then all I can say is this. Unlike Asus, they squeezed an ambient light-sensitive backlight in there. Like Microsoft's original touch cover, it's extraordinarily slim, and without practice, I am similarly fast with a similar number of errors compared to my Razer Blade. That's f***ing impressive. Which I guess lands us at the conclusion for this video, where I usually try to summarize what the product is and who it's for. So that'll take a bit longer than usual because those answers are anything but simple here. What is it? On the surface, it appears to be a MacBook Air usurper with no I/O that Apple is cramming down our throats by refusing to modernize the Air with a decent screen and storage. But if we dig a little deeper and look at that tiny, basically iPad-sized PCB that Apple is bragging about, we discover what it really is. A tablet whose touchscreen was stolen and replaced with a keyboard cover while it wasn't looking, making it a proof of concept product for two things, at least two things. Number one, the rumored upcoming Apple CPU. If a Core M can power a hyper-mobile Yosemite experience, then I wouldn't be surprised to see an A10 or A11 chip do that in a couple of years. And number two, USB Type-C, since it gives Apple a chance to ship this undoubtedly thoroughly validated but not yet field-tested connector in a relatively low-volume product before they risk deploying tens of millions of phones and tablets in the upcoming refresh, only to discover that it caused all kinds of problems. And as usual, the what is it goes a long way towards helping us answer who is it for. Not me, that's for sure. As much as I absolutely love the battery life and I can't help but feel just a little bit cooler when I whip it out and start typing away at the airport, I've got to do. And you'd have a much easier time selling me an Air with a decent screen thanks to its much more powerful hardware, not to mention the unassailably technologically superior Thunderbolt and MagSafe power connector combo, whose benefits range from additional speed and device daisy chaining to the fact that some asshole in Starbucks isn't going to trip on your cable pulling your $1,000 computer off the table right as you were about to save that latte-powered novel you've been working on. In fact, the only downside is that Thunderbolt stuff, like docks, is generally more expensive than USB stuff. But on top of the MacBook's inexplicably large price premium compared to similar devices like the Asus ZenBook UX305, Apple wants $80 for a fracking USB breakout dongle anyway, negating a lot of the cost savings. But I told myself this wasn't going to turn into a rant, so I won't do that, and I'll just do a snappy ending line like, so if Apple wants your devices to reflect who you are as a person, then I guess if you bought a MacBook 12-inch late 2015 Retina, you're the kind of person who's not in a hurry, and even if you were, you don't have anything particularly important to do. But you need to do it for a long time in between charges and look really cool while you do it. Speaking of looking cool, Ting's mobile network supports the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, so you can look cool while talking on your phone without paying more than you have to. They're the mobile carrier that's focused on customer service and customer satisfaction, which means when you call them, you don't talk to a robot, you get through directly to a person. You also pay for only what you use, with the average Ting bill at about $24 per month per device. If you're stuck in a contract, Ting will cover up to 25% of your cancellation fee, up to $75. And if you head over to linus.ting.com and try out their savings calculator and sign up, you'll get $25 in service credit or towards a new device. So check that out now.